please. For those who see me for the first time, my name is Nikolai. I'm PhD in history, and I'm the assistant professor of the Rudan University after Patrice Lumumba, and also Financial University of the Russian Federation under the government of the Russian Federation. My sphere of interests is military history, and history in the bright sense, of course. And today we're going to speak about nuclear bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki on the 6th and the 9th of August 1945. We're going to give this strategy our historical, and not only historical, but also social, maybe philosophic, and human estimation. And as it was during our previous lecture, I strongly hope for some kind of conversation maybe after my lecture is finished. You are welcome to ask me any questions you wish. Well, it's okay. It's absolutely okay for me and for all of us, I guess. So now let's proceed to the topic. So I'm switching my camera off and starting the demonstration once again. Well, my last question. Well, can you see the title? Yes, at the moment. Can you see it?
Да.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Well, let's start. Well, the first question all the historians ask is whether the nuclear bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki was worthy. Whether the United States of America should or shouldn't have bombed these two Japanese cities, and whether it was possible to avoid the catastrophic consequences of this military action. Well, dear friends, can I ask you to switch your microphones off now so that we didn't hear this noise? Well, can I ask you to do that? Because I hear some noise at the moment. Please just switch your microphones off and we're going, okay, to proceed. So, when I was working on this topic, I wrote several articles on this question. Well, one of these articles was published in Gimo University in 2016. The article was called Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the crime that should have been avoided. Well, in fact, it's not that simple question whether it could or should have been avoided. We'll speak about that today. Maybe we'll find the most proper answer on this question, because this question is very complicated. And of course, from the first sight, all of us understand that the implementation of nuclear weapons is destructive, and it is the last, it may be explained as the last military argument during any military conflict. Well, in fact, such a conflict like the Second World War was. But there are a lot of arguments, pro and contra, and today we're going to give them historical and scientific estimation. When I was preparing for our lecture, I used a huge list of materials, a huge list of American data. For example, here you can see the Frank Richards article, Why Truman Dropped the Bomb. This article was published in the Weekly Standard in 2005, number 10. You see it. And despite the fact that this article is about 20 years old to the moment, I recommend you to get acquainted with this article, to look through it, because it consists of, well, I think that it consists of all the arguments which can be estimated as historical background for this, once again, historical decision of Mr. Truman. And now let's proceed to the crucial topic of our conversation. Well, the end justifies the means. I guess you remember this maybe headline after the previous lecture, which was devoted to the bombing of Dresden. In fact, if we look at the problem from the position of the United States of America, I think that, well, as for me, as for historian, I should be objective. I should estimate all the circumstances of international relations, all the circumstances of the global world conflict, which was still relevant at the time when the nuclear weapons were implemented, were used against Japan. And also, I should do my best to remove to remove politics from our historical analytics. So, if I were the president of the United States, what should I do? Of course, I would have done my best at that time to make my country stronger, to make my country safer, and to protect the lives of my soldiers. Well, I think that's logical, that's clear, and there is nothing new in these words, on the one hand. But on the other hand, if we're speaking about the methodology of this goal achieving, of course, these methods, they cause a numerous list of questions. When I was preparing my scientific study to the question, I introduced some alternative point of view, due to which Mr. Truman could underline the military power of the United States of America, could demonstrate the Soviet Union the military power of the United States, but could also avoid this catastrophic number of victims, of civilian victims, which we unfortunately can observe in reality. So on this map, you can see these two cities and these two bombs which were used. Little boy bomb was used against Hiroshima on the 6th of August, and the Fat Man bomb was used against Nagasaki 3 days later. In the first redaction, the second data was the 12th of August, not the 9th. But Mr. Truman decided to use the second bomb for, well, 3.5 days later, earlier, excuse me, because he was afraid that Japan would capitulate and withdraw this war and stop this war, and he wouldn't have the opportunity to test the second bomb. Well, the word to test is the crucial word here. We'll speak about that further. So, excuse me, some problems with my computer. Okay. Everybody knows that the United States of America has successfully implemented the Manhattan Project and tested the first nuclear bomb in the history of the mankind. Well, in fact, that was a great success of the United States science, military science, of the new scientific sphere, the nuclear sphere. It was also invented in the United States of America, and well, till this episode, I think it is great. But we should also remember that the Manhattan Project was being prepared under the top secrecy, and this top secrecy played a cruel joke against the United States of America. So yes, they tested the nuclear bomb. Yes, they did it. But they had to demonstrate the destructive consequences, the destructive potential of this new weapon to the mankind, and first of all to Comrade Stalin and to the Soviet Union. Because the top secrecy of this project was so high that any kind of demonstrations in the Nevada desert, well, could be called as disinformation or falsification or something like that. So the United States of America had to demonstrate the new possibilities of this destructive weapon. Also, Mr. Truman, as the new president of the United States, of course, needed some strong argument, or maybe several arguments, during the negotiations of the Potsdam Conference. You can see it here, the 17th of July till the 2nd of August 1945, because Stalin was the most politically experienced participant of this conference. Firstly, Churchill also was there, but he has lost the elections in Great Britain, and he was replaced by Clement Attlee. And so, in fact, the situation was that Stalin was the oldest politician and the most experienced politician and the strongest politician at that conference. And Both Truman and Attlee were newcomers as the leaders of their nations. And so Mr. Truman had to demonstrate his new weapon, and his strong argument was that the United States of America was the only country at that time who possessed this weapon. And he decided to inform Comrade Stalin about that during the conference in Potsdam. There was also the second reason why he did that. If you remember, the big conference of the anti-Hitler allies took place in Yalta on the 3rd till 10th of February 1945. It was the Yalta Conference. This conference laid the foundation for the post-World War, post-war world, and it was decided that Soviet Union would join the United States of America in their struggle against Japan 3 months after the Germany capitulated. After the German forces capitulated, and Germany also capitulated. In fact, it was Mr. Roosevelt who asked Comrade Stalin to join the United States of America in that war and proclaim war against Japan. The latest term was August 1945. And of course, Comrade Stalin gave his promise to Mr. Roosevelt. But Mr. Truman was not that sure that Soviet Union should participate in war against Japan, because in this case, Soviet Union should also take part in a post-war conference over Japan, and also would have great influence in the Pacific Ocean, in the Pacific region, and also in China. And that will cause long-term problems for the international policy of the United States and for the positions of the United States in the region. So the first thought of Mr. Truman was to withdraw Soviet Union from this process. But in a short period of time, he realized that it was impossible to remove Soviet Union from its participating in the defeat of Japan. And in fact, the second variant for Mr. Truman was to make Comrade Stalin sure that the United States of America was at least stronger than Soviet Union in the military aspect. So in this case, Mr. Truman decided to inform Comrade Stalin about nuclear weapons. Well, as you see, it was done on July 24th, 1945. Stalin's reaction towards this information was very calm, well, maybe even indifferent. But of course, Stalin understood. Of course, he realized what kind of weapon it was. Of course, Soviet intelligence was working very hard in the United States. And of course, Comrade Kurchatov, who was working on the project in the Soviet Union, of course, also informed Comrade Stalin about the destructive potential of this weapon, and also about the leading position of the United States in this unofficial nuclear race. So Stalin wasn't glad to hear this news, but Stalin was not surprised. So, as we can see, we come to the non-official period of international relations, which I suggest to mark, I suggest to remember, and I suggest to outline. Everybody knows that the historical period after the Potsdam Conference, and especially after the speech of Mr. Churchill in Fulton, till the collapse of the Soviet Union and the collapse of the Warsaw Pact organization in 1991, this period of time is called the Cold War. Also, it is called the bipolar system of international relations. And the system of international relations which replaced Yalta-Potsdam system, the bipolar system, in 1991 till 2022, I guess, this system is called the unipolar system with the leading role of the United States. Today, we can observe the construction of new, principally new, multipolar system of international relations with several centers of power in the world, in the global world. But as for me, I think that unipolar system of international relations could be observed twice in our history. Twice. And the first time, it was a short period of the nuclear monopoly of the United States of America. That was a short period since the 16th of July 1945 till 29th of August 1949, when the Soviet Union has successfully tested its own nuclear bomb. But these 4 years, that was the period of nuclear monopoly of the United States. It's very difficult to argue on this topic. It's very difficult to contradict it, but, well, as I have already said, as a historian, I should be objective, I should be frank, and whenever we like that or not, but the United States of America was the only country which possessed nuclear weapons 1945, in 1945 till 1949. On this picture, you can see, well, some allegoric demonstration of this period. Here we see the nuclear monopoly of the United States, and here we see the official proclamation of TASS. And look at this date. Well, we know that the Soviet nuclear bomb was successfully tested in August 29th, 1949. But the official relation of TASS refers to the 25th of September. Well, the fact is that the results of the Soviet nuclear tests remained being under top secrecy for about 1 month longer, well, minus 4 days, because it should be proved by dozens of institutions and military and hundreds of military specialists that the nuclear test of the Soviet bomb was successful. And as far as it was clear that the test was successful, Soviet Union officially proclaimed that since this day, it also possesses nuclear bomb. As you know, a Soviet atomic bomb or nuclear bomb was tested near Semipalatinsk at the test field in Kazakhstan. And Soviet Union has never implemented its nuclear weapons, has never used its nuclear weapons against any country or any city of the world. Now let's look at the consequences of the atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Please excuse me for this Russian slide, but it's very informative. Here you can see Nagasaki, if I'm not mistaken, on this slide. And the atomic explosion here, that's Hiroshima. So the number of those who were killed in a moment is about 80,000 people in 5 seconds. Late 1945, about 150,000 of people, also 150,000 people or 165,000 people died because of cancer. And the total number of those who were killed in Hiroshima is about 200,000 of people. Of course, all of them are civilians. As to Nagasaki, well, the number of victims is just a bit smaller, but nevertheless, it looks catastrophic. And now to the main question. Could this handmade catastrophe be avoided? Well, I think that it not just could, but it also should have been avoided. You remember, at the beginning of the lecture, I told that if I were the President of the United States, I would have done my best to make my country stronger and safer, and also to prevent my soldiers from dying in land battles against the fanatic Japanese troops over here, in Okinawa, maybe in Kyushu, in Honshu Isles, and so on. These decisions were made after the American landing on Iwo Jima, where the United States of America suffered heavy losses. These losses were estimated as unacceptable, and after that, the General Staff of the United States decided in future to avoid such battles in order to save the lives of their own soldiers. So, if I were the American president, I would have done my best to save the lives of my soldiers. But if I had to demonstrate to Comrade Stalin, or even to Churchill, or even to the Western world, that my country is the strongest country in the world and I possess the most destructive weapon in the world, I would have tested this weapon not on the civilian cities, on the populated cities of Japan. I would have tested these weapons somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, somewhere against one of the dozens and hundreds of small isles occupied by the Japanese army since 1941 till 1943. You can just look at this map. You can see here there are not dozens, but hundreds of such isles with the garrisons, about 500, 600, 1,000 of soldiers. And if such weapon should have been tested, well, you're welcome. You can test it somewhere over here. The number of civilian victims would have been hundreds of times lower, and the consequences of the destruction would have been dozens times lower. Here you can see maybe the Isle of Bougainville is not the best example, maybe, because it referred to Australia. It was the mandate territory of Australia, New Guinea. Maybe it's not the best example. But if you look once again at the map, you may choose each isle. And please, if you want to test your weapon here, maybe it would have been the best decision from the military point of view. I strictly underline this point because we're speaking about the military logics here. And the second bomb, which was used against Nagasaki, was just the clear test of the new type of nuclear weapons. It was the first bomb was the uranium bomb. The second was the plutonium bomb. So they differ from the physical point of view. And of course, the testing of this bomb, from my point of view, is the hugest military crime. Is even more cruel than the use of atomic bomb against Hiroshima. So here you can see another map of the Pacific region, and the regions which could be, well, the best ones for implementing these weapons, for their testing, are underlined by me over here. Because the civilian population is extremely low, no big cities, even no big villages, just Japanese garrisons. Once again. So that's just the military logics. But unfortunately, the military logics was not prevailing when the decisions to implement atomic bombs, to use nuclear weapons against Japan, was made. It wasn't the military logics, it was the political logics. And in this case, that's not the first time when we're speaking about the interference of policy into the logics of decision making in the United States. So, the first demonstration of military power of the United States, as you remember, was the destruction of Dresden on 13th, 15th February of 1945. So, they demonstrated the Soviet Union, the destructive power of their strategic aviation, as you can see it here, because the Soviet Union didn't possess any kind of strategic aircrafts which could be comparable to B-70s and B-29s, super fortresses of the United States, and the British Lancasters. Soviet Union just didn't have such kind of planes. And that was demonstrated in Dresden. As you remember, our previous lecture, we were talking about that. So Dresden was destroyed. But was Dresden the only city which was destroyed? Of course not. Yes, we can remember about 50 German cities which were destroyed from 70 till 95%. But we're speaking about Japan today. And the biggest city in Japan was and is today, of course, its capital, Tokyo. Tokyo was destroyed just like Dresden on the 10th of March 1945. It wasn't nuclear bombing, it was just the bombing by strategic aviation, but the methodology of destruction was the same. Fire tornado, and the wooden made city was destroyed for about 95%, just like Dresden. That was the capital of Japan. Was that enough? Of course that wasn't. And now we just analyze the historical fact. I can't say whether Mr. Truman or the General Staff of the United States, the Committee of Chiefs, whether they discussed or didn't discuss the possibility of nuclear testing on one of the occupied isles in the Pacific region. I don't know about that. But we know that these two bombs were used against two civilian Japanese cities. And as I can see this logic, it is that simple and cruel. Because the death, as you can see it here, the death of 200,000 of people is the strongest argument than the death of one small garrison somewhere in the Pacific. The total destruction of two cities is the best argument than if we compare it to the destruction of some maybe a military base or navy base of Japan, or once again some small occupied isle somewhere in Guinea or in the Pacific region. That's why I quote this slide: no to military logic, yes to bloody demonstration. And as I have already said, that's not the first time when the Allies demonstrated their destructive potential to the Soviet Union. That was Dresden, that was Tokyo, and that was the apotheosis of that was the demonstration in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So, which conclusions can you make? The first conclusion is that the bombing of Japanese cities implemented on the 6th and especially on the 9th of August 1945 can be considered only in one way: as war crimes, and international society should realize that when studying the history of the Second World War. Well, I'm not speaking about the Japanese society nowadays. You know, the Japanese society is uh, so convicted to the propaganda of the United States. I have read two historical books. I have read two school books of the Japanese pupils, and there is nothing about uh, about the responsibility of the United States for these crimes. It is just said that the Allies used nuclear weapons to stop the war, and that was a success. That's what they write in their school books. Uh, why I underline the 9th of August 1945? Well, if we forget about any kind of humanism, if we forget everything about military logics, if we forget everything about Christianity, well, about democracy, and about, well, if we just forget everything, well, maybe Mr. Truman thought that using the nuclear bomb against Hiroshima would prevent Soviet Union from military escalation and from military concurrence against the United States. Maybe. But the implementation of this weapon against Nagasaki on the 9th of August 1945, that was just the test of the new type of bomb. And as I have already said, I just repeated, I think that this crime is even more cruel than the using of this bomb against Hiroshima. But in fact, well, as a historian, I would not uh, differ these two military crimes. The second point is the political necessity of the bombing. Yes, it was recently present, but in the case, the bombing could have been practiced on other targets in order to avoid a colossal number of civilian casualties. Well, that's just what I have already said about the testing of these bombs against small islands in the Pacific region. The third conclusion is, as I have already said, the bombing of Nagasaki is indefensible. Well, that's a military crime with no variants. And the main conclusion of our study, well, you see here just a small part of my study of 2016. The main conclusion of our study is that the use of atomic bombs by the United States was not much military as political and demonstrative, and it was directed against the USSR in order to demonstrate it the new military potential of the United States. Because the United States of America, of course, understood that the next step of international relations will be about 95% based on military confrontation between the United States and Soviet Union. Well, this conclusion of the American president was, on the whole, relevant, but the methods of this demonstration, well, I will never accept them as a historian. And my position is that together with Dresden, which I call a prelude to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the destruction of these three cities with the smallest um, military reasonability is a very huge military crime. And if you are interested with the materials I was using, please, there's also a very small number of the sources I used during my work, during my research. And if somebody is interested, maybe I will demonstrate you in our Telegram group the original article devoted to this problem, written in 2016. Well, thank you very much, dear friends. Well, as you see, the topic is once again very wicked, very cruel, but my position is that we should know the history. Please, if you have any comments or any questions, you're welcome. I'll stop the demonstration, and I think that we can now start our conversation. Okay, please.
Thank you for the lecture. If we could talk more a bit about the children's books in Japan, what was it that they said?
Yes, when I was reading the school book, the chapter devoted to the Second World War is not that huge. It's about 15 or maybe 12 pages. This book was published in 2012, if I'm not mistaken. And there is nothing about the preparation of the United States to use nuclear weapons against Japan. There is nothing about the decision of the United States to involve Soviet Union in this war. There is nothing about that. And the first book I was reading didn't even mention the United States of America as the country responsible for atomic bombing. The second book mentioned the United States. But the second book was published in early 21st century, I think 2001 or 2003, something like that. And well, these books are relevant for the Japanese schools, and Japanese children are being brought up and educated, well, by using these materials. So their understanding of the Second World War and their understanding of the role of Japan in this war is, well, totally falsified, unfortunately. But we should understand that. We should know about that in order to understand the position of the today's Japanese political elites in their policy against Russia. First of all, as a Russian historian, I I understand their methods. I know what they are based on. Everything is based on education, and if they have such education, so we shouldn't be surprised about their position. Well, that's my answer.
Спасибо.
Yes, I would just like to know. I have read somewhere that these two cities were on the majority Christian cities. Is that true?
Oh, well, no, I don't think that they were Christian cities. I don't think so. I think that they were, well, Buddhist cities, because the majority of the Japanese population, they are Buddhists, and even today the number of Christians in Japan is not that huge. I don't think that these cities were Christian cities. No, I
Oh,
think it's
okay.
maybe
Thank you.
some historical fake. Mhm. Well, any other questions? Maybe some other opinions, arguments, replics.
Do you just to go back to policy? Do you see like direct effects on the relations between Russia and Japan? Like, for instance, in the islands, Sakhalin Islands.
Well, it's a very complicated question. Well, our historical dispute between Russia and Japan lasts for about 200 of years. And concerning these isles, I think even the Kurila Isles, yes? I think you mean them.
I may have, excuse me, yes.
Yes, and that's the main obstacle why the peace treaty between Japan and Russian Federation is still not signed, because their position is that all the four Kurila Isles belong to Japan, and our position is that all these four isles belong to the former Soviet Union, now to the Russian Federation, because they were freed by the Soviet troops during the war, as well as the southern part of the Sakhalin Isle. And there is no dispute for us at all whom these isles should belong to. And the Japanese side just ignores the historical reality and just keeps insisting that these isles should just belong to Japan, just because the Japanese want that, just because they think so. Of course, we cannot accept this logic, and that's why any kind of peaceful treaty between Russian Federation and Japan cannot be signed in the short-term future.
Isn't it also, aren't they also under pressure from the Americans because they want to place some military bases with their rockets pointed at Russia?
Um,
I think mostly
that's not the, that's not.
political.
Yes, thank you for your question. In fact, that's not the matter of military bases. The United States of America have already um, placed their bases on Okinawa and their anti-rocket and missile defense on the territory of Japan. But the problem is that if these 4 islands would belong Japan, our Pacific Ocean Navy, our Pacific Ocean Fleet of the Russian Federation will lose the opportunity to be present in the Pacific region. That's the problem. It will be blocked in Okhotsk Sea. That's the problem. And of course, the Japanese understand that. And yes, you are right. You are right that the United States of America, of course, they support Japan in this matter. And yes, they make some pressure against Russia. But if we're speaking about the present day, all these isles belong to the Russian Federation, and that's our sovereign territory.
Mhm.
What was the reaction of the Soviet Union to the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki?
Yes, thank you for your question. Well, the reaction was neutral at that time. You know why? We were allies at that moment. Yes, today we understand that the confrontation was in 1 year after 1945. Yes, since 1946 we faced the Cold War. But if we're speaking about August 1945, we were still allies with the United States of America. And the Soviet Union uh, freed the territory of the People's Republic of China, or the present day People's Republic of China, and the United States from their side, the Korean Peninsula, and we were allies. And that's why when these 2 bombs were dropped on these cities, the reaction of Soviet Union was neutral. Yes, I cannot say that we were glad that these weapons were used. Of course, we were not glad. Of course, we understood that that was a demonstration. Of course, we understood. But on the other hand, yes. Mhm.
Do you know anything about the reaction, like the non-public reaction, say the Politburo and Stalin was to that? They must have had an opinion about it.
Yes, the public opinion in Soviet Union in 1945, it
I'm
was
talking about the non-public opinion of the political leadership.
the non-public opinion. Well, as far as I can estimate, the non-public opinion was maybe a bit panic, because once again we realized why these 2 cities were destroyed, and it deals in no way with the Soviet propaganda. It just the common sense. Yes, everyone understood that Moscow or Leningrad could be the next. And the non-official reaction was something close to panic. And that's why in such a short period, in 4 years, it's a very short period. In historical retrospective, it's a very, very short period. We invented and tested our own atomic bomb in order to prevent the use of these weapons against the Soviet Union. And that was our success.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question.
Is it true that some of the scientists that worked on the atomic program, the Manhattan Project, they were very conscious about the lethality of this bombs, of this weapon, and some of them, from what I read in my history classes, is that some of the scientists supplied the blueprints to the Soviet Union about these to the atomic bombs.
Yes, thank you for the question. I can name you at least one scientist who was very conscious about this weapon, about his input to the invention of this weapon. That was the former German physics, Mr. Otto Gahn. When he was working on this project in the frameworks of Manhattan Project, he really did not realize all the destructive potential of this bomb. Yes, of course, he knew that this bomb was 10, maybe 100 times stronger and more dangerous and more destructive than any kind of bombs invented before. But he strongly believed that the American authorities will never decide to implement this bomb against civilian cities. And after the first bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, well, Otto Gahn has got a terrible depression, and in fact, he had never forgiven himself for his invention. And the second part of your question, that some of the scientists somehow gave the results of their inventions to the Soviet intelligence, to the Soviet part. Well, it's not that simple. If we're speaking about Mr. and Mrs. Rosenberg.
No, there were some other ones. I heard that there were other scientists. There was something to do with the NKVD at the time. Or was it Chekhov? I don't remember which one. But they apparently there was some American scientists who just, well, if we can use the term, betrayed the American establishment, and they gave the blueprints or some of the information on the production of this bomb, of this weapon, to the Soviet Union.
Well, the only thing I can say with a 100% guarantee is that the United States of America, they exported a part of their nuclear technologies to their closest ally, to Great Britain. And in Great Britain, there was the so-called Cambridge 5, the big Cambridge 5, the 5 Soviet spies of their British nationality, who, well, from the British side, they betrayed their country and helped Soviet Union to acquire these technologies imported from the United States of America. Yes.
Okay.
And concerning the American scientists, oh, well, maybe, I think on the one hand, it could be so. But on the other hand, as I have already said several times, that the Manhattan Project was over the top secrecy. And I don't think that any secrets could leave the United States of America, at least till 1946. And after 1946, yes, it is possible. I'll try to find some information about these scientists, and if we're going to have some other lections, maybe I will even tell you about that with materials, with arguments, with documents.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, okay, dear friends, thank you for today's conversation. Very nice to see you once again. I hope that the lecture was interesting to you, but at the same time, I don't think that you have revealed something new for you. But on the other hand, I think that the conversation was successful, and well, the information and the presentation also was interesting to you. Thank you once again for your attention, and hope to see you. Michelle, you have a question? Yes? Michelle, I can't hear you. Okay. Well, some problem with your microphone where I can't hear you. Okay. Thank you so much. Michelle, maybe you're right. What do you want to say? Because, well, unfortunately, I can't hear you. Dear friend, okay. 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 Mm-hmm. Yes, Michelle, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your information, for your replies. Yes, thank you. Thank you. I agree. I totally agree. Yes, especially for the patience and wisdom of Mr. Putin. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Dear Michelle. Well, dear friends, thank you once again. See you next time. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good
Bye.
night.
Good
Good
night.
night.